morning. Good morning. Yes, it's a beautiful morning today. Look out the window. It's a glorious and beautiful day in Southport. The City of Southport Board of Aldermen Budget Workshop, May 22nd, 2023 is now called to order. Thank you for your attendance, Board. Thank you for being here. City staff, thank you. And citizens, thank you for being here today. First Lady, Ms. Kirkman, thank you for attending, and thank you for those that are watching virtually at home. I would like to call on Reverend Alderman Lowe Davis for our invocation, and this will be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Let us pray. Almighty, most loving, most gracious Lord, we thank you for all the blessings of this day, and we ask you to overlook all of our grumbling about the rain recently. We ask that you guide us and inspire us to make good and right decisions for the City of Southport. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Alderman Davis. Hope everyone had a good weekend. I just want to mention one event over the weekend, the plein air. The talent that was in town this past weekend, where they're outside and they're painting these beautiful scenes of our city, it was phenomenal. And I'm very grateful that I guess it was the prayers of Alderman Davis, the rain did hold off long enough for them to get their beautiful portraits done. So thank you for that, and I hope most of us were able to enjoy that. We are here for our workshop, and it's sort of appropriate today that we have our Hurricane Expo this evening, and we have our budget workshop this morning, and it's about being prepared. It's about prevention. It's about planning for what we need to do and what we must plan for to be ready for what may occur. So I feel like they're both in sync with each other, and I appreciate the work that the city staff has done. City manager, thank you, and our finance department, as well as the board. I know you've been going over this budget, and we look forward to the discussion. So item D, approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion. Mayor Pro Tem motion. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Allen. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Item E, our agenda. The first item on the agenda is the update on the 2023-2024 budget based on board budget deliberations from our workshop on May 10th, and I'll call on City Manager Bonnie Theron.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to just first of all apologize that we had to cancel last Tuesday, but I thank you for your patience. I woke up that morning at like 6:30 and went, oh my God. And what was the previous director had put in 1.2 million as an expenditure under contingency for the board, and it should have been moved out of there, and it wasn't. So that really inflated the tax rate, because $1 million is a lot of money. So I had the finance, Brandon and Paul, work all day on Tuesday to rework the budget, taking that out of there. And what you have in front of you, we all feel very, very comfortable with, is a tax rate, a decrease to 23.5 cents per $100 value instead of the current 39.56 cents per $100 value. That includes the items that you had did a consensus on at your last meeting, the positions, and the capital items I had requested. And certainly I'll be glad to have Brandon go through what he did and the changes that made that tax rate go lower, because that's why he's the expert, and Paul on how they get to that point. But it dawned on me that should never have been in there to start with. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon so he can explain.
Yes, so whenever it was in that contingency, pretty much we had revenues over expenditures that much, and it was just kind of balancing to zero at that point. So when we took that out and we left 200,000 for admin contingency for the salary study, we took that million out, we made it to where we're going to have what the revenues would be at the tax rate of 235, and that made it to where the tax rate was the 0.235 after we reduce the potential revenue based on moving that million out. So we took down the ad valorem tax revenue in order to reduce that tax rate because it was overstated by that much, about that $1 million.
I look at everyone's face, I can tell there's still confusion.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it makes sense to me because what we were talking about before didn't make sense. I was trying to figure out why, I mean, we were essentially, were unable to even come anywhere near a revenue neutral tax rate. It didn't make any sense. And I didn't, you know, now I think it makes sense. I think it's great. I'm very excited that we have the, at least opportunity to not only adopt a revenue neutral tax rate, but one that's actually slightly better than revenue neutral while continuing to provide new services to our citizens. So, you know, this is one of the better days that I've personally had in quite some time. So I'm very excited about it.
There's still just two items, though, that is still, we're not, first of all, I never, and it's my fault, mentioned about the request for the Assistant Parks Director. Heather's here in case you had questions. And then also whether we want to include the possible lease of a building for public safety. So those are the only two outstanding issues. Everything else you've kind of gone through already.
Can I've just got a couple questions. The capital list, I could not find what I think was an updated. Do we have what were the capital items? The one I have came from your PowerPoint, and so I'm not quite sure what all is included in the capital list.
We have money for the comprehensive master plan, building survey, stormwater issues, city pier cross bracing, and also 60,000 I put in there for the decking, and 50,000 for the parking study. And I think, oh, and then I moved out of parks over to capital, the gazebo roofs at 20, and storage for equipment for parks at 15.
Okay, because, so this is my struggle with the budget. One, we'd said all along it was going to be revenue neutral. So this is far beyond that. But part of that struggle for me is that when we're looking at capital, and this may already be planned for, Bonnie, but when we're looking at capital improvements, we know shoreline stabilization's coming. It's probably going to exceed the $5 million that we were granted by the state. The yacht basin pedestrian corridor improvements, I mean, all we've done now is, you know, paint a line basically and some signage and arrows. So we know that we need to address the road. So we know there's hundreds of thousands of dollars probably eventually there that needs to be spent. We've got a new police building. We're doing a study for a new police building. We know we need tens of thousands of millions of dollars of roads in our future. Sidewalks, I think we only had $10,000 in this budget for sidewalks. And so, and it's dredging the yacht basin. We know we're trying to do that in the spring some way. We're working to that end. And so while we don't know how much, there will be money involved because while we may get a 75% grant, we still are going to have to pay 25%. So for me, the capital list is far beyond what we're looking at here, to me. And maybe I'm looking at this wrong, and maybe nobody else has those questions.
One of the things you could do is take money out of fund balance. You have a very, very hefty, a very good, what's the magic number now? We got 6.6312 fund balance. That's a lot of money. You could take a good chunk of that, put it into a capital fund, let it earn interest. It's like an enterprise fund. It doesn't have to be designated to anything right now, but at least you're starting to build on a capital fund. So you could do that out of using fund balance.
And maybe I thought our capital fund was being treated as an enterprise fund, that once we put money into it, it had to go to capital improvements like that. I'm sorry, I already thought that was happening.
Well, there is the one, that's true, I forgot about that. There is that one. You could just put more money in there, but it doesn't have to be assigned.
Correct.
Use some of the fund balance and just move it over there, and then it can just sit there until you need something. A lot of towns do that. One of the things you're missing, which Paul's working on for me right now, you don't have a fund balance policy. That is like Finance 101. That should have been done a long time ago. So we're putting one together right now to give to you for your next meeting to start looking at. And so that is like, what do you want for the minimum of fund balance to be? 63 is high.
Yeah.
Even for a hurricane town, that's high.
Well, our neighbors in Charlotte aim for a minimum, I think, of like 78%. And so I'm just, not that we have to be our neighbors. My mother told me I didn't have to do what others did. So, so anyways, that's for me is, we talked about being revenue neutral, and it would be revenue neutral at that initial price you told us. I'm for building up a capital improvement fund for all of these needs. Even some of them, the dredging, we really have been working toward trying to get it in the spring. So those are just some of my concerns about revenue neutral. The other, I had some questions about the budget too, just some things in here. So I don't know if we want to do that or no.
Yeah.
Oh, about the budget.
Yeah, I think it's fine
well.
if you have them now to go ahead and ask them, because, I mean, they've presented the budget, and
Yeah,
for all
no,
the board, any
no,
questions that you have.
I just had, just trying to understand under electric on page 41. 41 of the budget, for page 41 of the budget. The latest budget we got. And then item 5900, line item 5900, trying to understand how that number was arrived at, because when I look at the capital outlay system, the accompanying language, I get a little bit of a discrepancy of numbers, and it has that double asterisk there and on page 42 in that line item information. So I'm kind of wondering what that means, but I get a discrepancy. Either when I add the numbers up, I either get 3,029,000 and change or 3,705,000 and change. So I'm not quite sure
I can double check with Ellie, but I think the asterisk is that it's an estimate at this point.
Okay, that's what that would mean? Okay, cool. But it's a different number when you add those numbers up. Either way, it doesn't come up to that number. And I was just curious if there was something else in there.
That decreased because whenever we added depreciation, and a lot of the materials was paid in this year's budget for Ellie. I got you. Okay.
So if you're taking, so the 1.6 is our electric, underground. And so they purchased 945,000 worth of materials. Then I'm assuming then the labor, this next thing, even though there's a semicolon there, that labor is meant to reflect the difference in the 1.6. Is that how you would take it?
Yeah, that would be additive for the underground infrastructure from what it's listed on here. Is that what you're trying to get at?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So there's that. And then when you add up then the 5, so basically we're saying the 1.6 is 675 because we've already spent the other, right?
Correct, yeah, the 945 was already spent for
Yes.
materials this year.
So then we've got these other numbers. So you've got the 675, the 5, the 120, the 500, and the 1.25, 250. That doesn't add up to the 3134. It's page 41 and 42. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
I'm getting in touch with Ellie, so if you have another question, then
Yes, ma'am.
I'll get back to you.
Okay. And then I couldn't remember, and I'm sure you told us, Bonnie, how we are covering and the anticipated increases in the health insurance, since it's an elective. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, that was a consensus, so we have it in the budget.
Okay,
So you're all set.
okay, super. I just didn't know how to find it.
I think it was what, we put 100,000 to cover the 50%? You know, and again, we don't know for sure, but, you know, we figured that would, you know, do it based on that survey.
Okay. Then and then going back to page 7, which is back to the ad valorem taxes, just so I understand, and that's, of course, line item 1100. There's a difference between requested and proposed of about almost $1 million. That's the 996,000 and change. And I was trying to understand, was the 4,346,000 based on the revenue neutral number, which would have been 0.2847? Is that what that requested number was? Is it based on being revenue neutral?
You're talking about the new requested number on there?
Yes,
That's
sir. Yes, sir. On page 7, at the top, versus the proposed, which would, I'm assuming, would be based on the 0.235, is what that number would be based on.
That is correct. So the proposed is the new amount based on that million come out contingency and the new rate. The $1 million that we had in contingency removed, and we took out of the ad valorem taxes revenue.
So was the 4.346 based on the 0.2847, the revenue neutral?
That is correct, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I was just,
And that was with the 2847, and when that $1 million contingency was still in the budget.
I got you. So then my question is, so between the actuals and the requested, you had $14,000 difference. Was that the revenue neutral, like that's just the minor little difference with it being revenue neutral?
With the requested amount from the estimated actuals?
The estimated actuals, yes, sir. And then the requested, there was like a $14,000 difference. I just wondered how that was.
Yeah, that was just because we added some more incoming growth from what was the estimated actuals to what it was requested for this year. And that was based on the old rate and the numbers for that.
Okay.
But then when Paul and I went and did the calculations, we expected another $14,000 worth of growth on top of it.
I'd like to put my 2 cents in. I am really happy that we'd be able to lower people's taxes, including mine. However, I just don't want to repeat history here and put maintenance aside and capital projects just to lower taxes, because you end up paying more in the long run, as we have seen. So I'm good with it as long as everything else is covered.
So in reference to the shoreline restoration, I'm not as overly concerned about that because I don't think we're going to be able to do it in any one year. So if we had 5 million, we would kind of build out what 5 million looks like, and we may only get to the dock. But that's okay, because we would be planning to do the next thing in stages. In reference to the electricity, one of the questions that I had, City Manager, was I don't think we can move on the yacht basin until we bury the telephone lines that are there. Because there's, as I understand it, they are sitting on our 4 feet that the road is off. And so if we buried them, we could actually expand the asphalt on that side. And the preliminary discussions as we were going through that is that Ellie thought that that could be done in this coming year. So I'm not sure. This is probably an estimate right now, because I'm not sure that he had the numbers of what that would actually mean. So that's one of the estimates.
Yes,
You know what I'm talking about?
that's for next year.
I
it
think
is
the
there.
yacht basin is buried, I think that it's just buried on somebody else's property.
Yeah, I've got something to say about that. The road in the yacht basin, the yacht basin road, at least from Short Street further west, the road itself is a right-of-way. None of the land on either side of it is right-of-way.
I apologize. I should have been more specific. I'm talking about Yacht Basin Drive. You know, Yacht Basin Drive. So we have light posts and electrical posts that are, I think, on our dirt. I think they're on our dirt. I'm not even sure.
No,
They're not?
no, I know they're not, but there's everything there is already buried. It's just buried on somebody else's property. So
What are those telephone poles that are there?
I don't think there's any overhead there.
Is it just,
They're
is it just lighting?
Just lamp posts.
Well, once again, the issue is that I have never seen the actual drawings of
Well, the
who
survey-
owns what. I just haven't seen them.
The survey, I mean, you can go down there and see the survey line and the markers. So it's very obvious to me that our utilities are buried on other people's property in that location.
Okay.
So that is something that would have to be remedied before we could fix the road there. And I don't know if that's even a project that Ellie was
Well,
considering.
I was just saying that as we go through this quagmire that goes on for like 4 years now, some kind of plan, real plan, needs to be developed, whether we can do something or not do something, just to get a yay or nay out of the whole thing. So I just wanted to have that looked at. I do have another question. Back in April, I asked the question, is it true that we had $2 million in funds left over from the last budget? And the answer that I believe I got was no, we had $1.8 million. Then we have a $1.2 million that we realized was in the wrong column, and we moved that over, took $200,000 out for a project, and put $1 million into the fund. And we have ballpark, $350,000 in some kind of reserve or extra money. Is that, am I correct on all of that so far?
We have the breakdown here for the fund balance.
There was a $350,000 figure, 356 or something, I can't remember the exact number, but I wasn't sure, and it said, I'm paraphrasing, unexpected or unanticipated revenue. Yeah.
And with the 335, I think that's whenever we went back through the anticipated revenues for this year, and then we were able to find 335,000 because of the numbers we had now compared to what we had 2 to 3 months ago.
And the $1 million that we're going to use to pay for things, that is not I'm going to confirm, that's not a one-time $1 million. We're expecting to get that same amount of money this coming year?
For the 1 million we removed from contingency,
Yes. The one, we had started at 1.2, we
Right.
took 200,000, we moved $1 million. Is that one-time money, or is that recurring money that we're gonna just normally get in revenue?
so that was because of our expenditures were so less than our revenue, and that was the difference in both of those. And then we put 200,000 in admin for future salary studies. The 1 million, like you said, is a one-time kind of revenue above the expenditures, and that was what was reducing the ad valorem, because that's the one thing we really had control of to affect the tax rate.
So the 1 million included the term that I grew up with, is credit for turnover. We had a number of positions, we did not hire them until almost the end of the budget year. There's money there. So would that be part of that $1 million?
Yes, that is a part of it. I'm not sure, is your question, is this going to happen each fiscal year?
No, my question is that we have $1 million, but we had budgeted for other things and we didn't spend it. Part of that is because we couldn't spend it because we couldn't hire people. But we now have hired them. So that next year, that money's gone. So my question is, if we hire whatever the number of people is that's on the slate, in a year from now, that'll be an additional cost to the budget because you won't have that $1 million in theory if you were able to hire everybody, relatively soon. And so, are we setting ourselves up for next year to have to raise taxes because we're only able to defer the cost of the additional employees for 1 year?
Yeah, because what we've put in there right now is 10 months of salary, not 12, figuring there's no way you're going to hire
Right.
everybody for July 1st. But then, yes, next year, you're going to have to carry that cost plus a COLA or whatever it is you decide to do. And so that, depending on the surplus, if there is one, then it could raise taxes.
But there's no reason to assume, next year we're going to have some growth in the tax base. Or at least we'll have no growth, so we'll have the same tax base. If we have the same tax rate, we have the same amount of money. So we could hire, there's no negative impact on the budget. Going back to the 1.2 million, Rich, I'd kind of encourage, I'm trying to pick my words carefully here because I don't want to, I think the way to think of that 1.2 is it's just kind of a placeholder that the previous finance director didn't quite know what to do with. Mm-hmm. And so that was just sort of extra money and it just got stuck in that account. But it's not, it's not money that, it's not revenue that's going to go away or anything. It's part of what the tax rate and the valuation created. So, it's not next year is going to be the same, if that makes sense.
I think I understand what you're saying, and rather than drag this out forever, perhaps you and I could sit down and chat, because I hadn't thought of it in that regard. So I just want to confirm that if our old tax rate included that $1 million, and we just didn't spend it, So if we're still revenue neutral, we would generate the same amount of money again, and it is not necessarily a one-time event, I think is what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it kind of messed us up the way that 1.2 got put in there, but it's not, I mean, it shouldn't have been in there like that. That's not good. That's not how you do the budget.
Well, I'm less, yeah, I fully agree that we have an accounting issue there, but that's, I'm not getting.
Which is, I think, been resolved. But yeah, I mean, that 1.2 is just kind of like, just think of it as like, you know, we were totaling up the amount of revenue and the amount of expenses, and there was 1.2 million more. And at the time, of course, you have to account for that somehow in the budget that's presented to us. I don't know that that was the best way to have it presented to us, but I mean, it's basically what was left over.
Right.
You know.
So I'm still struggling with the fact that we budgeted for the 1.2 million. We had a tax rate that included that, but it was for employees that we already have, which we will have again next year. And so that $1.2 million will need to go to the current employees because we finally hired them, and the new employees will raise on the debit side of the ledger. And I'm looking at it just as this is a one-time fix. Am I like off in deep end someplace, sir?
I don't think that the whole 1.2 wasn't all about employees, though.
Yeah, that's correct. A lot of it was revenues that were under projected, you know, and we got a lot more money in than was projected to go into that budget. So that was part of it, plus the employees was part of it. And Brandon, what else was there?
Excuse me.
Yeah, we're talking about the 1.2 million. What was
it composed of?
Yeah, there was revenues that were under projected. That was a big part.
Expenditures that were overstated, revenues that were understated. The proposed FY24 budget does fully fund all FY23 positions for a full 12 months, and it funds the new positions that we've had consensus on for 10 months that have to be advertised.
But what Rich is saying is they're going to have to pay for that next year, and if they don't have a $1.2 million surplus like they do this year,
Correct.
say they only get $200,000, yes, the taxes would have to go up in order to cover
to meet that need.
unless, like John said, there's a lot of growth, then that's going to add to the tax rate.
There's other expenses that we're doing this year that we won't do next year, and there'll be money freed up in the course of that. So, I mean, I hear your concern, and I'm not trying to be, I'm definitely not dismissing it, but I don't think that's going to be an issue, because again, we've got the valuation set, we're setting a tax rate, we're getting this amount of money, we're funding everything out of it. And I don't think that 1.2 isn't like extra money. I mean, it's included in that, the revenues based on the tax rate and the valuation. So if we just replicate that situation next year, we'll have the money, if that makes sense.
So my next statement has nothing to do with anybody in this room.
Okay.
Because I don't want people to think I'm trying to, no. So my issue is that without going through the laundry list of issues that we've had in tracking our money, I'm always concerned that we do not know exactly how much money we have, how much money we spent, which column it's in, because it's more than just this 1.2 million, as we know. So that is my concern, that I really want to drill down to make sure that next year we're not paying a whole bunch of money for 11, 12, whatever the number of employees, I've lost count now, that will be on the books by next year.
Would it be possible, Bonnie, for Paul and Brandon to do next year's budget real quick? Or at least, I mean, and not do them. No, I've got an abacus you can borrow. Not do the whole, but I mean, just do a calculation of tax rate and valuation, and just show that there's the same amount of revenue. There'll be whatever the amount of revenue next year is versus the amount of revenue this year is, and maybe that would give everybody some a little bit of peace with the idea that the money's going to be there, if I'm making any sense.
Let me just say that any good finance director pads a budget. Anybody who's any good does something so that they know that they're going to have extra money at the end. And I always bust the finance directors about that, because I'm always trying to figure out where they put it, but they will never tell you that. But they're smart, because they want to have a surplus. They don't want it to come in right at, you want to have a cushion. So you need to be doing that. I mean, the other thing that happened this year was the department heads did an awesome job of not spending all that money if they did not need to. That's a good thing. So there should always be some money, but the question is, and there's no prediction, will we have 1.2 million next year? I have these guys can't figure that out. You have a weather incident come in here, you can forget it. That's the problem, and that's why anybody who's any good at being a finance director wants to have that cushion, so you do have a fund balance. Because I think at one point, when Melanie first came in, there was no fund balance for Southport, which is horrible.
Yes, I remember being told that, yes.
But anyway, so at this point, you've got a very, very healthy one. But there's no guarantee. I mean, it's just, if you have growth, then yes, the fund balance will get higher, because we can only project so much. So if you have a lot more, then that's a good thing. Then there will be the money. So there's no guarantees there.
I've dragged this out long enough. I would enjoy the opportunity to sit down with our two budget guys and let them make me smarter on it offline, if that's okay with you, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
And I think the one thing we need to remember, that the budget is not a static process, it's a dynamic process. And if you look at the tremendous growth that has occurred just this past year, it's not going to stop. If you've driven around town and see the new homes that are being built, there's going to be an ad valorem tax on that new home. And if you look, as Mayor Pro Tem brought up, and the ad valorem taxes, if you look at that line, I believe it's on page 7 at the top, you see in 2022 there was $3,099,094. That was the actual in 2022. And then the 2023 budget, $4,148,498. And so, and then in the even though the tax rate, was different. So right now, the proposed is $3,349,966, which is lower than what previously has been taken in because of the tax rate. So there is room for money to be obtained if needed. That's what I'm saying. So with a budget neutral, you should be able to get at least as much as you had the year before, by definition. So this is this budget lowers taxes, and but there is potential for growth. And I think if you have the new homes and that new properties, between this past year and then the coming year, I think the city will be in good shape to be able to handle the needs, the projects, and that type thing. And we need to be aware of that. That again, it's not a static process; it's a dynamic process. If we have a unfortunate weather event, as the city manager has said, we need to be ready for that in terms of the monies that we'll need. So I just want to add that to the discussion. Any further questions for the city manager or our staff?
I just want to point out, I just did some quick looking. Just to be clear, City of Southport's had a fund balance since at least FY 13-14, when it was about 30% of the general fund budget. So, I mean, we've always had a fund balance.
I have the breakdown, Karen, for Melly. Okay, so the total is $3,490,000. There is $1.25 million, that'll be for 2 years for the second.
It's going back to the
Electrical.
electrical capital things you were asking about.
Sorry.
What page is that? 41, I believe.
41.
Yep, under capital. So, again, you have to take the capital plus depreciation. And Ellie said the total should be the 3,490. And then I have the breakdown if you need that.
So then,
You want me to give you the breakdown?
no, the 3470 include, you're saying it, so then the 31434, what is that? I'm sorry.
3,490?
I'm not sure,
Go ahead.
I'm not sure what we're talking. I know I was talking, are we in the line item 5900?
That is
Okay.
correct.
And then, so I'm looking at 3470 under requested, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so,
Yes, so the $3,134,490 that you're looking at, it was broken down because we added the depreciation, which doesn't affect the bottom line. So really, it can be that, and the depreciation can be lessened, because depreciation doesn't affect the cash amounts. So pretty much what that 490 is it breaks out the depreciation portion of it for the electric fund.
so then that would be a separate than the depreciation below it in the last line.
Correct. So we can,
You're depreciating the $3 million that you're spending in capital, is that what that?
this is just depreciation that we've had for getting equipment or prior equipment or land, because it was never in the budget the past 2 years for the depreciation. So pretty much what this does is it balances it. But like I said, the depreciation doesn't affect the bottom line whatsoever. So we can make that proposed be the 3490, and the depreciation just would be less. And just for you, you asked about the street column as well, for the sidewalks. That can be done through PAL bill funds. So that's why it's not in it as much as it may not show, because I think you mentioned about $10,000. But the PAL bill could pay for all the streets and the sidewalks.
How much money do we have in the? Yeah.
300 and,
317,000?
yeah, some
And we've got a-
320?
And we've got a dump truck and everything else that's coming out of that, right?
Yeah, there isn't going to be that much left once you do the roads and all that, yeah. But you have another years coming in this year, next year.
Is this the time that we decide how much we're going to spend out of the electrical fund to do underground cabling this coming year?
That's already in there. He has 1.6 million is for underground.
Okay, thank you.
I think we had set that up several years ago, I think, yeah, to make it recurring.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'd like to talk about the two. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to talk about the two items that we have not yet reached a consensus on, and that's Parks and Rec assistant and the leasing of the police building. I'm fine with Parks and Rec. The leasing of the police building outside of our city limits, and specifically way out. Now, I know that it's right across the street from city limits, that Walmart is in our city limits, but where that is, I think is a mistake in form and function. I don't think that our police station can protect and serve from that location as well. I also think this is putting good money after bad, that what we were thinking of, I believe what Chief Coring had mentioned was having some of the officers at the substation and the rest of them out at the old bank building. That's where, what's the name of that business? Quick Cuts, something? Okay, in that location. The cost, what is it, $2,538 a month in lease plus the build out, we could be putting that money toward something more permanent that is centrally located. We need our police station to be where the people are, not way far out. If somebody in town wants to go to the police station, they're going to have to drive all the way out there, fight traffic, and get there. And I believe there's plenty of parking, but that's about the only positive for that. I'd like to see our study consultants look at adding to, do an extension to the substation and making that our permanent police headquarters. I just think that it's a mistake to devote this much money, even for 1 year, to a place that is eminently unsuitable. The only thing good about it is its space.
Okay, very good comment. Any further comments on the police station issue in terms of its location, leasing?
I'd like to hear a career police officer. What are your thoughts on this? Not to put you on the spot, but...
I understand what you're saying, Lo, and here's the issue. We don't have a plan.
What?
We don't have a plan. We have something in the budget to look at a plan, to make a plan, which is laudable for us to do that. But if we're going to hire all these people, unless you're going to make them work 24-hour shifts, I mean shifts around the clock, just so we can stick them someplace, we got no place, we don't have any place to put them. So I think we're stuck for the time being moving them being the police out there. It is not my first choice, but it is a secure building. It has the ability to function as a police department for the 3 years, because in reality, whatever the study says, it's going to take us 3 years to build out whatever we're going to do to get a new police department. So we're stuck in a situation that we're stuck in, and so I'm in favor of it because of that reason.
What if we did go ahead and move part of the state police officers, part of the staff to the substation, and the rest stay where they are? I mean, we're already proposing to move some of the officers out to the new location and some to the substation. So why not leave
I'm
some
not I'm
where
not-
they are and then save that money and put it toward what we're going to do?
I'm not sure that the plan to use the old firehouse as a substation is, I envision it, I'm not speaking for Todd Coring. I envision that as during day-to-day operations, I need to go do some work, I need to interview somebody, I can run them down here, I can walk over there, and I can use that building for that. But for their roll calls and their meetings and their evidence and their camera work and all of that stuff that they have to have a central location, which has got to be very secure, and I somewhat question always the secureness of the current building that they're in, that bank building suffices. And we're 3 years out, probably, from a new building. Even if we wanted to turn that building into the police department, we're at least 2 years out just doing that.
Well,
I
we're
think the
further
other-
than that because we don't have the money to do it. So, which is back to the capital improvement conversation. But, Bonnie, I'm sorry, I stepped on you. Did you want to?
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to say is if we're talking about adding on these people for the city, I don't have anywhere to put them. I have nowhere to put them in City Hall. You know, we've got to do something in order to expand City Hall so I can fit new people in there. We're all on top of each other in City Hall right now. And there's no parking here. We've really gone into a jam over there where the customers don't even have a place to park. No conference rooms. You know, it's not a great setup for anybody right now.
So this allows for the city hall, the study is not just for the police department, but how city hall should be renovated to be able to accommodate staff, as the city manager is saying. So it works for two ways. One, it gets our police department out of city hall to a secure location, as Alderman Alt has said, and they have a vault there and that type of thing for the evidence, and then a plan to move forward as to where they would go permanently, and it will take 2 to 3 years. So this is sort of a bridge in that regard.
What is the actual cost if we move out to the Quick Cuts? If we move out there and we're there for 2 years, and I think that's conservative, but 2 years, the cost of the build-out and the cost of the lease, what's that total cost?
Right now, I am working with the leasing agent to have them do the build-out. Since that's going to stay there, we shouldn't be paying for it. And then the other thing is the actual lease amount is $4,200 a month. And I would say probably more 3 years that you're talking. The only other thing is a capital expense of around $30,000 for furniture, but that furniture will go into the new building. So it's one less thing you have to pay for in the new building.
Yeah, I'm in favor of leasing the space. It is in the city limits. It is in close proximity, frankly, to one of the more higher call addresses that our police department deals with. That was good.
I don't believe it is on the city limits.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at a city limit map, and it clearly is. You know, it's been requested by the police chief. To me, it's a great interim. We desperately need more space. It's a great interim way to accommodate those needs while we have our space study done and figure out, you know, what we're going to do long term.
Just out of curiosity, have we budgeted in the build-out of the current city hall for the new employees, assuming we move the police out, the cars that would be needed, the computers that would be needed, the phones that would be needed, the furniture that would be needed, and what does that look like in dollars that would be needed if we hired these people in the next couple of months?
No, that I do not have, but if you have capital, then and we start moving money, say, from fund balance over there. I mean, you've got offices already over at the police station where, you know, you could move people. I'm not sure that they would, but no, they're just starting the whole surveys. I mean, in fact, next week or the week after is when we're going to be meeting. Mosley's going to start meeting with the staff just to see what their needs are. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on this, Pro Tem?
Also going back to, I had a question about the Parks and Rec. In one language, it says recreation assistant. The other one, it says assistant director. So I just wanted to clarify what that actual position was.
Heather, can you, just talk about it, thanks. This was a part of the master plan that was talked about?
Yeah, I got it.
Yes, at this time, this earliest phase, we were just talking about a recreation assistant. An actual Parks and Recreation assistant director will be later on down if we continue to follow the adopted master plan that Dr. Herstein presented in January.
The other thing, I'm going back to our strategic planning document from January, the board's strategic planning. The concrete resurfacing of the basketball court behind, we don't have any accommodation for that right now.
No.
That's correct. You know, that's another thing that should be in our capital improvements plan. I mean, that thing is terrible, in terrible condition. So I'm just saying there's a lot of capital improvements that we're not planning for.
From a staff standpoint, we have been working with one of our new engineers doing a years out capital improvement plans. We're still, working with that and Bob Jarvis and, addressing, like taking my master plan and everything else that the city is wanting to do and kind of, coming up with a CIP. So we kind of are in the process of that. It's just, it may not be identified for this year's budget, but it is being addressed in the document that Bob Jarvis is working on with the different department heads.
Yeah, you're going to see that in June at your June meeting, that document.
You done?
I'm done.
Bonnie, the building survey that we have, the building survey,
Yes.
that's looking at what buildings?
All city buildings.
All
So
city buildings.
even those that are leased to third parties?
Yes.
Okay. Franklin Square, the jail, the courthouse, Maritime Museum.
Yeah, this is for all city buildings. So what happened to the courthouse will never happen again to any building. Look what they've done in here with the new floor, and we'll continue that process moving forward. Okay, any other discussion before we try to get some consensus and decisions on this budget? Any other questions, any comments? Okay. What we need to do under item 2 is that any further decisions by the Board of Aldermen concerning this budget, anything you feel like we need to change, anything needs to be added, otherwise we can move forward with it. And we have a June 6th public hearing scheduled, and we can move forward towards that. So any further questions,
I
discussions?
mean, I'd like to, my preference to adopt the budget that Bonnie presented to us with that tax rate and with the park and rec assistant and with leasing the building for the police. Those two additions being the only additions, in addition, plus the stuff that we agreed on at our last meeting.
Any disagreement or agreement
Well,
on that?
This is, I think it'll be interesting to have, I'm hoping that when we have the public meeting, we'll get some citizen input. This is what I'm struggling with, and I hear what you're saying, John. I'm struggling with, everybody knows we have millions and millions of dollars worth of capital improvements. A lot of, for whatever reason in the past, cans were kicked down the road, and here we are. So if we decide to not stay revenue neutral so that we can have another $500,000 or $600,000 to put in capital improvements, and then when we do get to where we're going, if we're not building a capital improvements fund that we can slowly, then it's a 15-cent tax increase, then it's a 20-cent tax. I mean, how do we get all this work done? And I appreciate the whole growth conversation, but we're not Charlotte, North Carolina. The amount of growth that we have, while seems exponential to us as a small town, it's not the kind of growth that would support projects like this. So I'm willing to do whatever, but I feel like we're trying to be proactive instead of reactive in everything that we're approaching. And so that's what I'm just, honestly, that's what I'm struggling with.
And I'm struggling until I meet with Paul and Brandon and they make me smarter about the conversation that I had, whether or not there's going to be an impact next year on all these employees. And so that's my caveat for right now.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, all right.
If, on the capital, if you are really concerned, then take money from the fund balance and move it over to that capital account. That's my recommendation.
Did the percentages of the fund balances, I know you said the general fund, can you tell me the water and sewer fund balance?
Go ahead, Brandon.
So for the electric fund, you want to know the unrestricted or just the total fund balance?
Well, I would assume it'd be unrestricted, because that would be the Bonnie, you tell me, that would be what we traditionally think of as the balance, right?
Yeah, so the unrestricted for electric is $4,520,000. That's the unrestricted. And for water and sewer, it is, for water and sewer, it's $25,577,000.
I'm sorry, what?
Well, I might be getting
I think you're looking at the total value. And do you have this in a percentage like you had for the general fund?
And you were right, I was looking at the wrong line.
It's okay.
$5,578,000. And yes, the percentages for the electric, so the fund balance available percentage to expenses is 0.626 for the electric fund. And then it is 1.2567 for the water and sewer fund.
I'm sorry, I'm confused, because the document that we got just the other day, I'm looking at this electrical fund. I'd like just to bring it down to you. Tell me why. Well, it says page 36 on the new one. I'm looking at it under electric fund. It says 2022 actual is 6.5 million. And then 2023 budget is 10 million. And proposed at the very end is 11 million. I'm trying to figure out what those numbers are.
Well, first of all, that's not the fund balance. He's talking about the fund balance. I don't think fund balance appears on that sheet, does it?
I guess I'm just looking at electric fund, so I assumed that was the fund balance.
I don't think we gave it to you because I just had them bring this morning. This is what the fund balances are.
Okay.
Can you go through them again?
And I'll email it to you later, but
So the water sewer was how much?
Water and sewer unrestricted is 5,578,519. And based on operating expenditures, it looks like the fund balance available percentage is 1.256, so 125%.
Which is extremely helpful.
Correct.
So 1.25%,
It's 125% of revenues.
it's 125, okay.
But, yeah. And just to be clear, I don't think you're talking about when Bonnie's talking about taking fund balance to put into capital projects, we're not taking that out of water and sewer,
No,
we're taking it out of the
correct.
general fund
Yeah.
fund balance.
Right,
unless
correct.
it's a water
Sewer
sewer type
thing,
of thing,
right.
right?
Is, the water sewer fund balance is in anticipation of the loan, right? That's why that percentage is the way it is. That's in the form of a question.
Loan amount, you mean? That's in a part of the rates.
Right, but the fact that we have that higher fund balance is because of that?
No.
No, no relation.
But I think as Mayor Pro Tem is trying to get that it is a healthy balance because we have been increasing the rates.
The way the rates were put together, from what I understand, is based on how much these loans and the debt was going to be, and that's why the rates are up as high as they are, to start off paying off these loans.
And the rates for the electricity are based on today and not in, I think it's April of next year, when they're all going to go up?
Brandon went over them with Ellie.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the electric breakdown for their expenses, the increase isn't calculated in that, and their expenditures. So it would be I think it's power wholesale is what's listed on there.
Because I know in the first week of June, Ellie and Paul are going back up to Wilson to figure out a new rate number, which may impact this. Because I'm thinking it's going to go up. But there's been a lot of discussion about what Duke Power is going to charge us, because they're charging the average electrical person like 30% more. So that's just, I don't know, you can't budget for it because we don't know what it is, but we should have a better handle of it after the first week of June.
But again, just to be clear, electric rates have no bearing on the budget. And it's an enterprise fund. The electric rates are what they are. The only part of it doesn't affect the general fund of our budget, just to be clear.
But they do affect the electrical fund because you take the surplus and you stick it in that, do you not?
Correct, yes, correct.
All right, any further comments or discussion? Okay, so
I just need clarification again on the assistant position and the lease. Because I'm hearing some people and I'm not hearing everything.
Well, let's see, we'll just go down the line. Who's in favor of the lease? It's not a vote, this is a workshop, so we're, I want to see who is, because if the board doesn't want to go in that direction, then we'll take it out of the budget, so. We'll start with the police lease. Who is in favor of that? Show of hands. Okay, so it is the majority of the board minus Alderman Davis. Okay, how about the Parks and Rec? Are we in favor of that? Yes, there's a majority for that also. So we'll put these two in the, include this in the budget as stated.
And what does that make our rate if we, now that we're at a consensus on everything? What's the rate?
Yes, so if you add both of those items, the police lease building and the recreation assistant, the new rate would be 0.2428.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
you probably haven't done the math on this, but so we had a sheet of paper that said that if you had a 300,000 home and a 500,000 and a 750 home, do we know what that would, how that would change that? If you have not, if you could just send it to us, please, later on.
Oh, I did the math for it while we were discussing things. So for between the 3956 and this 2428, then for a $250,000 house, new assessed at $360,000, then it'll be negative $114.89 compared to the last tax. For a $450,000 going to 648,000 new assessed value, it's negative $206.81. And then for $750,000 assessed house at the new assessed value of $1,080,000, it'll be negative $344.68. So it'll be a decrease still in the taxes compared to last year.
If we could have later on today, tomorrow, whatever, if somebody could just email that to us all, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think we should keep in mind that, for example, no two $250,000 houses have gone up the same amount. Different neighborhoods have gone up in value more than others. So while this chart is useful, it's not something that our taxpayers should look at and think this is, set in stone as to what they're going to be paying.
Yes, the average, you're exactly right. And some more than others.
It's just, I've always given that information as a general guideline so people kind of understand how it may affect them. I mean, it's not particular. I mean, you could take each of your houses and we could figure it out and then you'll know. But so somebody's still got to do their own math.
Funny you should say that. I have done that. So I did look at all of ours because we're random acts, and it goes from 52.6 all the way down to 14.6 in increase. I'm just saying it is a whole random thing, and
I mean, I get that, but we can't deal with every individual house.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm not saying that we
have
should.
to look at the totals and the average. I mean, I don't know what else there's out there.
I just think when we, in June, at the public hearing, we need to make it very clear that this is not exactly what will be the case for each property owner.
All right.
The other thing I just want to say, Karen, when we take a break here, I want to make sure you're figuring it out right, because we can go through that.
All right. Can we go to, so development services, 4350, it's got full-time employees. Where did the added employees, are they in here?
Yes, go ahead, Brandon. Brandon and I talked about it this morning.
You talking about for the positions that we had a consensus for?
Yes.
They are added in the numbers, they just may not reflect the descriptions entirely, but
And that included, just remind me, there were 3 positions that we,
yes, so there was a building inspector, a permit technician, and then the historic district planner.
okay. That wouldn't be in development services, but yes. Yeah.
All right, good. So now we know that the public hearing is June 6th. We need to set a date and time for the final adoption of the 2023-2024 fiscal year budget. Usually that's done at the June Board of Aldermen meeting, which will be June 8th.
I think we had previously, at least tentatively, what's on the 21st? Is that the public hearing?
No, public hearing is June 6th.
Right. We had tentatively set, I think, a meeting to adopt the budget on June 21st, hadn't we?
Well,
Was that just a placeholder, or is that
it was just a
real?
placeholder. We
Okay.
can certainly do that. I will not be here for that meeting if you want to hold it on that. I cannot be here on that. I had planned to have to be gone after all of our meetings, and I planned it that way. So, but the board has the set it how you would like. But we just need to set if someone can't be here, then they can certainly phone in or that type thing. I know Alderman All's going to be gone. We want to make sure that you can be a part of that.
You're coming back the 18th, Rich? Is that right?
Yes, sir, I'm coming back on I come back into the United States on the 18th, and I'm not sure that I can phone in.
You won't be awake until about the 20th, probably.
Well, if it's any time after the 18th, I certainly will be there, even if I'm strapped to the chair. But if it's earlier than that, I'm not sure that I can call from Albania or some other place that I'm going to be in.
Well, Mayor, are you going to be gone? Is it just the 21st you have a problem with, or is it that whole week or multiple days?
I'll be gone after the 18th. Yes.
And if well, I guess we could do it. When are you leaving, Rich? The 10th or before the 8th?
No,
the 1st?
unfortunately, I'm leaving on the 1st. And this was, this was planned 2.5 years ago.
I guess we're going to have the budget adoption without one of you. That's basically what we're looking at, right? I mean, there's no way to avoid that.
And I can make a case for either side. One, as an alderman, I vote, and normally the mayor does not vote. And I don't think it's going to be like a tie, so I don't think that's going to be needed. But I don't know what happens if the mayor pro tem takes over for the mayor. I don't foresee a tie.
I'm supposed to vote, Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're taking over the mayor's spot, can you vote? Well, then that answers that question. Thanks.
I'm sorry to say, I think that the 21st should, or another day after the 18th, having a voting member here versus a non-voting member is critical.
I guess, yeah.
I've got a question, because, well, I guess, assuming, so after the public meeting, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. After the public meeting, would we be making any adjustments at that meet? Would that be a possible thing that could happen at that meeting, Bonnie?
Yes.
Okay, so then we would have another conversation about this and another decisioning.
Yeah, of course, the problem is Rich ain't gonna be here.
But you're not
so-
going to be here.
But
and-
if we can figure out a way, and I'll work with the staff, that I can call in. I'm going to have cell service wherever I am in the world. It may be midnight my time that I'm doing it, but that's okay. If we can figure out a way to do that, I'll listen to the 6th, or is this the 6th or the 8th now? Yeah, the 6th. I'll listen in and I'll talk. If we're mirroring what the planning board does, I guess I talk to Dorothy and say what my thoughts are, and she has to relay them. I think that's how we do it for the planning board. Isn't that what we do? The only question I have is, last time we talked, there was a time delay on the live streaming. Is that? 90 seconds.
But I think Cheyenne was trying to work with some people to try to fix this whole thing. So we're going to need to do that if that's going to work.
There was Boxcast is the issue.
That certainly explains why on the planning board there's some disjunctiveness when they're trying to figure out, the guy on the phone, what he's talking about. Okay.
Also to consider, I believe our city attorney mentioned that if you are going to allow remote participation in voting, the board has to adopt a policy that says that before you can actually do it.
Well, for the 6th, there's no voting. There's just conversation. Until we get a better system, we can actually see each other and talk to each other and have conversation. I think it's very awkward for a voting situation as it stands now.
My only thing is, if we wait till, what's it, the 21st that we're talking about? We don't have the if something needs to change, do you not have to advertise it another 10 days? That's in the form of a question.
Can you be more specific about what about
Like
changes?
the budget, if
The dollar
say,
amounts?
right, if we want to make changes in it at the 18th, not 21st, then does it not have to be re-advertised?
It does not unless you're having another public hearing. Once you've had the one public hearing and you've noticed that the budget is available for review at the city hall and the library, then you don't have to notice it again.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and board, why don't you go ahead and set the date instead of debating?
So we're going to do the public hearing on the 6th and then the meeting itself on the 21st? Is that
If that's what you
we're
would like.
doing?
Okay, the meeting will be on the 21st. The public hearing had already been set for June 6th. And we still have a Board of Aldermen meeting on June 8th. So any further questions on that?
No, not about that. I got one more question.
Sure, please.
Just wanted about the budget and electric. I noticed that the aluminum pole conversation was still in there. I just wanted to.
They're already researching alternative ways. In fact, Ellie talked about one that he has found already, so we'll give you an update.
All right, before we go into closed session, any board comments?
On the 21st.
It'd be, y'all decide, usually at 6 o'clock in here. That'll be the best time, so public can be here. Because normally it would have been at the Board of Aldermen meeting on the 8th. All right. Any board comments? Alderman Allen? Alderman Carroll? Alderman Alt?
No, sir.
Alderman Davis? No, thank you. Alderman Lombardi? No. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem? All right, great. Well, this has been a good meeting. We've certainly gone over this budget, and I want to appreciate city staff for their work and the board for their work. And what I need now is we're going to go into closed session. I'll need a motion, but I want to read this. This is to consult with an attorney retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege. I'll entertain a motion. So moved. Alderman Carroll, is there a second? Second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. We will go into closed session to the back room and to consult with our attorney. Let's take a 10-minute break, though, before we do that. Thank you.
Would the board members kindly take their seats so we can wrap this meeting up?
I guess we should end this meeting on the 21st of June, so he'll make sure he's here. Yeah, I think so. We're fine as soon as he gets back.
Can
So
I'll move we
anyway,
come out of closed session?
We're
Nope.
fine. No, we don't have to talk about closed session. We met with our attorney. We're out of closed session, and we met with our attorney. No action was taken in that regard. So this has been a good meeting, and we have a quorum, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul and Brandon, for all your hard work.